Hey, so welcome to another episode of An Hour with My Mom. My guest today is Heidi B. And Heidi, thank you for being with me in this space. So tell me a little bit about Heidi, like what made you interested in being on An Hour with My Mom?
Well, first of all, it's because it's you and I like you.
Thank you.
And even though it's been a long time since we've seen each other, I saw your I saw your post and I work in the field of death and dying.
Mhm.
That's where I live and have for a long time. So when I saw your little write-up, I thought, you know what? I really like Chris. I think that's really interesting
Mhm.
and deep and informative also, but mostly it just resonated with me and it was such a loving request, putting that out there and a bold request too, because I think a lot of people don't really want to go there. So it just wasn't I yeah, you caught me at the right moment.
I appreciate hearing that. I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. And I feel it's funny, bold isn't the word that comes to mind as I was thinking about this. This just really came up from an outpouring of grief and feeling like there is no shelf life to people dying. There is no shelf life where, at our expiration date, where we need to stop talking about people. And I just made the 2 year anniversary. And it's weird. I even hear my language and saying, I just made the 2 year anniversary. You know, there was nothing big or significant that happened. And I used to feel like there was this huge marker that there would be some change in me with each anniversary. But I'm just another day, in a way, further away from my mom. And this was an opportunity to allow me to talk about my mom and the impact that she's had on me and the world, and then give people the chance to hear about their loved ones. Because I think we just learn so much from grief, and I'm fascinated by death. But so much of this is I'm really fascinated by life, and I'm giving people an opportunity to talk about life as well. So I'm happy. I'm so grateful that I caught you in that moment.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Chris. And I'm sorry that you are having to deal with the loss of somebody that you care about. And it's hard. It's really hard. And
Yeah.
every single one of us will go through it. I mean, nobody's exempt, I don't think. For very, very
Yeah.
few people. So
Yeah, absolutely. So Heidi, tell me, who are you bringing into our space for this hour?
so it, there's so many people. There's so many people that I would love to bring into this hour. And but the obvious for me would be my brother Mark. um, just because he would hate this. He would hate it
He would hate this. Why would he hate this?
because he didn't like any attention on him. He didn't like, he hated it when the cameras or, he was just like, stop. But I think he's definitely the most significant person in my life that I have lost. And I've
Mm,
lost, I work in the field of death and dying, and I've taken care of a lot of friends who have died and strangers, but when it's a family member, it's different.
yeah.
So he was the one I chose to bring in.
Okay, so tell me about Mark. What's Mark's story?
So Mark, I'm just laughing because he would hate this so much. Mark,
Is he cringing right now? Like his spirit is cringing.
totally. So that's why it makes it even better. I'm the oldest of five children, and Mark was my next sibling down. And we had, let's see, a 5 or 6 year age difference, I believe. Is that right? Or maybe seven. I can't remember exactly because, there were so many of them. But Mark was my first sibling. So that was number one. He broke that code of only child that I had. And passionately shared with my mother, who was single, and then she married my stepfather, and then Mark came into the world, followed by um, three others. Mark was beautiful. Like his physicality was just stunning. He looked like a girl, and he had long golden hair and piercing blue eyes, and he was cheeky. He was naughty with this angelic face. Um, and he really was the one, like I said, my first sibling. I fell in love with my siblings, being being a female, and then all of a sudden having these babies and children and little people, I wanted to take care of them.
Yeah.
So, so growing up with him, and then I had a brother after that, and another brother, and then a sister. So Mark was cheeky, he was naughty, he was sassy, he was beautiful, he was funny, he was dark. And as he grew into a man and a teenager to a man, um, I think we shared a common bond that all of us, I was close with all of my siblings, but Mark and I had this streak in us that was just a little bit darker than the rest, or a little bit scratchier than the rest.
Help me understand darker, like and
Um,
scratchier.
you know, and I don't want to use bad words or anything, but
You
um,
can. We're talking about death. I feel like there.
yeah, we can go there.
Yeah.
Um, Mark had a certain irreverence
Mhm.
about him that was truthful. So if he saw the truth in you, or if he saw through the bullshit, he would call you out on it. And that would rub teachers the wrong way, because he wouldn't put up with stuff. And so, and we kind of bonded on that. Um, he, that being said, he had this sensitivity about him that was extraordinary. He was really deep and super thoughtful in his kind of, Mark way. I mean, there was always something funny and irreverent that he did, but underneath it, he was the true Pisces that he was, that deep feeler, that sort of mysterious part. And as he grew into this beautiful, I don't have a picture of him right in my studio here. Um, like handsome, 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 Tom Cruise handsome. He was the sort of original hipster in that he drove his VW bus, he made craft beer, he had bees, he was into organic gardening. He would read his philosophy. He studied philosophy, but he also studied law, and was a lawyer. He lived in Berkeley. Um, he loved to ride his bicycle, like long haul bicycle stuff, and then turn around and go boar hunting with some crazy people. And then he cooked a lot. He loved to cook and barbecue and his bare feet, and he was deep. Like you could go deep with him. And he was also extraordinarily humble. And the quips that would come out of his mouth were so irreverent and so darkly funny and sassy and true. But then his smile would just sort of soften the sting a little bit. And we laughed a lot. We laughed. We would, just do silly things like often siblings do. So he had three daughters and his wife, and they lived in Berkeley. And he worked for Vodafone and traveled a lot, and he was their legal counsel. Um, and I know you don't want to go into this, but I think this is a little bit
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
Mark was 46 years old when he died, and
Oh, wow.
he died suddenly. He drowned in Hawaii with his 6-year-old daughter.
Heidi, you can go into this as much as you want to.
Okay. So it was very sudden and it was very, horrific, and it still is. And it will be 8 years in July, but it's still really raw. I think when you have a sudden death and the
Mhm.
person and it's multiple and they're young, the grief is right there all the time. It's right there.
Wait, so Heidi, Mark goes on a family vacation and he and his 6-year-old daughter drown.
Yeah, they went in his way, because he was always out in nature. He loved nature. He took his girls and they hiked down to some tide pools. And they were down there, and a radical wave came and swept his daughter out, and then came and took him. And his other two girls were there. So it was very dramatic, very, you know, intensely tragic. Um, and horrific and
Yeah.
strangely beautiful at the same time. And I know that's a weird thing to say,
Mm.
and people might not understand that. Um, but there's something to be said, and this is all my opinion. But when Mother Nature calls, whether it's Mother Nature, and when she calls you in a way that's all encompassing, you can't, she's stronger than us. She's more powerful than us. So
Yeah.
the combination of, the spiritual world and then Mother Nature, it's it's this horrifically tragic, beautiful um exit, I guess. I don't know how, to put it into the right words. It's deeply, deeply, deeply sad, the story,
Yeah.
and remarkable and profound, and shattered, just shattered our family to
Yeah.
its core.
Heidi, tell me,
So,
can I ask, how did you find out? Like, I'm sure you knew that they were going on this vacation and it
yeah.
probably felt like this was a great experience for the family. And how did you find out?
Well, it's kind of interesting because they, so his wife has a connection with Hawaii, and they both live there too. One of their daughters was born there. So they know the island. They know the dangers. They know that, this wasn't,
This wasn't unfamiliar.
no, 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 no. He had been there before. He knew, you know, he knew the risks, and he shouldn't have gone down there. I mean, it's not a place that you should go, but a lot of people do. And it was calm, but then this rogue wave came.
Which island?
Big Island,
Big
Honolulu.
Island. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really fascinating. The day that he died was on a Saturday, and I was planning a bridal shower in Santa Barbara for my daughter-in-law to be. And I was decorating the park in Montecito. It was very shishi and bougie and all that and beautiful.
Mhm.
And I was frantically trying to get all the pink roses and the lacy tablecloths and get it all set up before the young girls came. And while I was doing this, there was a black crow that came and landed on one of the branches above where I was setting out all these beautiful frilly pink things. And it was, and it wouldn't go away. And I stopped and I said, listen, you need to leave. You got to go. This is not the time. This is not the event where I need a black crow. A beautiful white dove would be nice, but this is not black.
Mm.
This is not a black crow kind of Halloweeny thing, right? And it just wouldn't go. So I picked up a stick and I was trying to sort of scare it, not hit the crow, but to kind of
Shoo it away.
shoo it away. And it wouldn't go. So I finished my task and had to go back to my place to get ready and came back and we had this beautiful shower in the park. And I felt a little on edge, which for me, doing an event or a little party or, having champagne and cupcakes is, who doesn't like that, right? So I felt a little uneasy. After the shower, all the girls piled into the car and we were going to go do some, go home, change our clothes, and then go to some bars and do this thing. And I was feeling a little like, oh God, I'm the old lady here and all these young, beautiful 20 something year olds. But nonetheless, they said, we want you to come with us. So while we were driving home to go change our clothes and drop all the gifts and the leftover food off, my phone rang. And my daughter-in-law was in the car with me. And I saw that it was my other brother calling. And I said, oh, let's not answer that right now because I'll talk to him later because we're pulling up to go. And I don't want to get into a long conversation. And without even asking or anything, this was very odd. My daughter-in-law to be, after I said this, actually leaned over and answered the phone, which I thought was a little unusual for
Mm,
her to just
yeah.
defy what I just said, which is not her nature. I mean, it's just not, yeah. So she answered my phone in the car, and I was on speakerphone, and we were just pulling into the house. And it was my other brother who informed me that Mark and his daughter both had been swept away and had drowned, and they had died. And I, sat there for a minute, and
Everybody in the car heard?
yeah, it was just the two of us.
Okay.
So she heard it. Now, at that moment, the first thing I said is, who all knows? And he said, his wife and you. And I said, well, do our parents know? And he said, no, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm the oldest. I will tell them. Don't just stop, just everybody stop. So at that time, I had one brother that was in Colombia, I think, a sister in San Diego, another brother, the one who called me, was in Japan. None of us were in close proximity. Japan, Colombia, Canada, LA, Santa Barbara, Sacramento, the Bay Area, Oregon. Like everybody was spread out.
Yeah.
Nobody was together. So I sat there for a minute and I thought to myself, how do I tell my mom I'm in Santa Barbara, she's in San Francisco. And I sat there and I thought, what would I want to know? What do I drive frantically and hope she doesn't see this on Facebook? Do I, what do I do? So I thought I would want to know right now. I would want to know if something was wrong, I'd want to know. So I called her, but I was worried that she was alone.
Mm.
And so I had to kind of, hey, hi, I have some news that's not so great. Are you alone? And she started freaking out. And I said, you need to lie down for a minute. I needed to, I
To
was
prep
worried.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, I was worried she would pass out or faint or hit her. Um, and before I called to tell her, I called a very close friend of ours to tell him. I said, you need to drive over to my mother's house right now. Somebody's got to be with her. I won't be there for a few hours. I'm leaving now. So I immediately then got on the phone and started calling and sort of holding it together. I mean, I pulled everything in me to hold it together to inform the family. I then called a priest friend to go over to my father and to tell my father because I knew that they were close and I felt like, and he had Parkinson's and I thought he needs to have somebody
Hmm.
there. So I just was trying to navigate who to tell, how to tell, and would they be alone? Yeah, it was just like I kicked into overdrive
Yeah.
and didn't take the time to process it for myself. I had to,
Mm.
the oldest, because I work in the end of life field, I'm the automatic go-to person that people would call and say,
Right.
okay, what do we do? So, and the little interesting thing is here I'm in the parking lot and I thought, okay, I've got to go back to my Airbnb and pack up my clothes and get in the car and go to San Francisco right away to get to my mom and then get on a plane to go to Hawaii. When I got to my Airbnb, 6 minutes away, I got to the Airbnb, I jumped out of the car and I went into the house, grabbed my things, stuffed them in the suitcase, and as I was walking out, I noticed on the threshold of the door, the front door where I had gone in, was a black crow's feather, a shiny black crow's feather. And I picked it up and I still have it on my little altar for him. So that was sort of the first of many significant little signs that carried me through this time.
Mm.
So I went to San Francisco, got to my mom. My mom and I had not been as close as mother's daughters go up and
Life
down.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a little awkward, but I got there and spent the night and then got on the plane the next day to go to Honolulu, where I met my other brother who had come in from Japan. And yeah, and then I ended up taking care of both of their bodies, bathing them and washing them, and had to, fight for that a little bit. I usually do that for people, and I've been doing that for 40 years as a home
Mhm.
funeral guide and teaching people and doing it for others.
Mm.
But to be in a situation where you have to do it suddenly for a loved one in a state that's not your state,
Yeah.
without all your stuff, not your home, was a tremendous learning experience. I felt like I was put into a position of, I was in a position where I'm usually the one teaching people how to manage it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it was really intense.
Can
And
I can
navigating.
I ask, Heidi,
Yeah.
what made you elect to do that? What made you elect to want to retrieve their bodies, wash their bodies, and
Um,
carry on with that?
for me, because this is the work I do, I
Mm.
can't imagine it any other way. For me, if a loved one goes, I'm not letting anybody else touch them. These are my people. And that's just what I do. So,
Can you share what
yeah.
that was like?
Um, it was profoundly uh, difficult. And at the same time, it felt like my whole entire life was leading up to that moment. So, it, dealing, getting into this situation where obviously my sister-in-law was just beside herself with grief, losing her husband and her child. And then, of course, the girls were 12 and 9 at the time, the two older ones. The little one was 6 years old. Um, there was that. And then there was dealing with the coroner to say, please don't do an autopsy. Um, and navigating a completely different state's system.
Yeah.
Now and I'll get to that, to the question. Um, because I work closely with funeral directors here, and one in particular, I immediately called them up and I said, I need your help. I need you to tell me who in this town I should call. And he said, you call this guy. This is the funeral home you should use. And then he got on the phone and talked to them and said, she's okay. Let her
Nice.
do what she needs to do. So in the end, it was great, and it wasn't. We weren't able to bring them home because the house where we would have brought them was under construction, and it wasn't conducive. So we just had a 1 day thing, but I was able to bathe them and to dress them and to sing to them and to care for them in a way that so many other cultures do, and so many
Yeah.
of us have done eons and eons, before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer sort of?
There's so much. There's
Yeah.
so much. I'm curious. You said you sang to them. What did you sing to them?
When I first saw them, um, when I first saw them, it was just blew me away. And I, again, had to keep it together. Um, I spoke to them. I spoke to each one of them first.
Yeah.
And I was mad as a hornet with my brother. I was just laid into him, just ripped into him. And then with his daughter, I just could only sing Christmas carols to her and songs about angels and Mother Mary and like that was the only thing that could. And we're not overtly religious or anything, but that was what I felt like I needed to do, was to sing these sort of gentle, sacred, seemingly sacred. It wasn't like jingle bells or anything, but I
Hmm.
had to do something.
Yeah.
And, and I picked her up. I picked her up and I held her and I rocked her.
Oh,
Uh, being in that position, and especially if the mother or the father's, well, obviously the father's not there, but if the mother or the other parent or grandparent isn't there, and I'm a surrogate parent in a way, or I'm her auntie, you don't think, you just react and you just do. So, yeah,
yeah. And Heidi, I'm wondering, like, how were you taking this in? Because I hear like your training, your experience stepped in, but yet your sister and your auntie, and like, I wonder how were you experiencing this as a person, this whole procedure? Like, did
nobody's
um,
ever asked me that.
mm, yeah,
I think the the moment I didn't ever leave them alone when I had them, except at night when I'd go home, but I had them over the course of a couple of days until we had the family come. And I just had to hold it together. And I probably was in shock, but I can't break down. Do I can't do that until I'm done with this. When I was in with them. And, this is all super vulnerable stuff and things that, I don't, I mean, I've shared it, but when I had them both together at one point, oh, and I would have to say that there was a staff member that was with me the whole time, and she was amazing and she was great, but she was just floored. She said, nobody does this. This is not normal. I'm like, well, they don't, in my world, it is.
yeah,
Um, there was a moment where I was with my brother and I felt myself, I felt the tears, the sort of hot tears coming down because I was in a cold room, and they like splashed onto him. There was sort of these tears that came down onto his beautiful, like, gorgeous body. And that is the moment that I knew. I said, this is why I'm here. This is why I was put on this earth. to be here to fill some sort of karmic payback, some sort of, I don't know what, but this is a highly significant point in my life and your life. And there's some kind of contract, some spiritual contract or something that we have, that I am here doing this for you and for your daughter. So there was a recognition. I've only had that happen one other time, I think, but it was so clear. Um, and I had the foresight to recognize that. And when I did, then it just sort of came out. And in a way, I know this doesn't sound right unless one is there, but in a way, it was, I have to say thank you for allowing me to care for you. And I've wiped your bottom and I've fed you and I've, taken care of you and we've fought and, over the years and I've, given you a bottle and made you cereal and now this is the ultimate final thing that I am doing for you and your daughter. Um, it was heavy and profound. Um, so and incredibly special at the same time because people don't get to have that experience of being entwined in a deeply, deeply, powerfully sacred ritual. A lot of people,
Yeah.
most people don't do that.
Heidi, I feel like there aren't words. There is not a word. I mean, intimate is the word that comes to mind, but this sounds deeper than that. And hearing that, like, this is what made you feel like this was your purpose to be on the earth and to be able to feel that in such a incredibly difficult moment. It's a weird juxtaposition to feel that purpose at such a difficult time. But it's fascinating and it's powerful. Um, just the intimacy of that moment.
And it does sound weird. And I know people wouldn't relate with that, hearing that, but it was, when your brain can't comprehend, you know,
Mhm.
when they say, make sure you think about what you would do if a plane it goes down, that you can recalibrate a little bit and
Mhm.
not be stunned if the plane does go down. They talk about that, and I can't remember what it's called, but because it was such a unusual, that's a trite word, but it wasn't an everyday occurrence.
Mhm.
Wasn't.
Mhm. But
Um,
and you use the word beautiful. And when I say weird, I don't mean weird in a bad way,
yeah, yeah,
like weird in a beautiful way. And like what I'm picturing is just you holding your niece and singing Christmas carols to her, and like you, like, an interesting circle, you raising your brother in a lot of ways. And he was the first person that you raised. And this is a full circle moment that, like, you raised him and then you were able to usher him into the next world too.
yeah, yeah. It was intense. And and the other thing that was interesting is I saw his daughter being born.
Mm,
So not, I mean, I wasn't in the room when she, at the birth, but for her birth, I opened the door in the hospital as she was just coming out. And then I saw that and then I closed the door. I thought, oh, this is not the time to come in and say, hi.
right.
So I thought about that too, that to hold and see somebody that's just fresh in and fresh out. It's, we don't have it's just not something we do often.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Um,
No,
so
no.
in that respect, I'm very grateful to them as human beings from a spiritual perspective that I was allowed to partake in that and to care for them. And it
Yeah.
and it was a privilege. No. I mean, and again, you know what I mean? It
I
was,
know what you mean. I know
I'm
what you
not,
mean.
I wasn't going to send them to, his wife and her mother wanted me to be there doing that. And I wasn't going to let a
Mm,
stranger handle them. Oh, hell
no,
no.
no, no. And like you said, like it's like your life had been preparing you for this moment.
Yeah.
And what better person, like you said, not a stranger. This is a family thing, and that's how you take care of your people.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you hold Mark now? Mark and your niece. What's your niece's name?
Mina. Mina.
Mina. Pretty
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. It's funny because after, so we did it, we had a memorial in Hawaii, and then we did a big one in Berkeley a few weeks later. And still, I was holding it together and planning the event. And it was a huge event. Like, I don't know, a couple hundred people were there at least. And it wasn't until the Monday after, we had it was just like weeks and weeks of planning and intensity and emotions, and my siblings calling and upset, and everybody's freaking out, and children and grandchildren and nieces. And I remember the Monday after everything was done, and I went to my kitchen table and I sat there and I was kind of paralyzed for a few days of just, I didn't know, I didn't know what to do. And I sat there numb. It was the first time I knew, oh, grief, numbness. I know what that is now. And so, because I have a spiritual practice that I believe in and follow, I was able to do sort of my work, whether through meditation and through talking to the dead, through having an understanding and perspective that the dead are with us. They're around us. And for me and for what I believe in, that has made all the difference. So my relationship with him now, um, I have my moments where I say, fuck you.
Yeah.
When his dog, I have his dog who's right here, he's just his dog.
Okay.
When Patch pees on my son's, I don't know, suitcase or somebody's shoes, or then I'm really mad at my brother and I let him know it. And I just bail and just excuse my language, but you'll have to beep it out. But so I have this deeply loving, like, really, like, you had to do that. You had to do that. So when the dog does something naughty, which, and he's a really good dog,
Mhm.
I let it out on Mark. I've got the dog. We just did that. So it's sort of a continuation of how we would talk to each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel that I had to transform my relationship. It's like, okay, you're not here physically, and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that you are here spiritually around us, that you are working up there on behalf of all of us and this world. So I do have an open dialogue and
Did
do things to help.
did you believe that before
Yeah.
Mark's
Oh
death?
yeah.
You did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I go
So
to a concert or hiking, I sort of bring him into my consciousness and kind of take him with me.
how do you talk to him? Like how do you like how yeah, because I think like I appreciate that and I believe in that, but I'm wondering for somebody who might be listening and thinking like how do I talk to somebody? Yeah, how do you talk to the deceased?
Well, they're different cultural things, different
Mhm.
practices. But for me, in the mornings, and this is what I get lazy about it now because it's been 8 years, and you know, but for the first 2.5, 3 years, I was pretty hardcore about it, and it helped and it worked.
Mhm.
really, really, really well. So in the morning, right when before I get out and start looking at my phone or whatever, I would think about both of them, both Mark and Mina, and just sort of think about them, think about their face, their facial features, their voice, and just kind of really think about them and feel a warmth in my being and just kind of sort of send it up there in a meditative way or in a loving
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
So I do that in the morning and at night. I would think about them before I'd go to sleep. And then during the day, like I said, if I was going to um, hike an area that I knew that he loved, or if Jimi Hendrix comes on, or something that I know that Mark loved, I would kind of think about him and sort of invite him in to experience what I'm experiencing. I know this
Mm.
sounds hard to do. Um, so in a way, I'm talking to him in my thoughts and really inviting this sort of mood of what I'm experiencing and trying to share it back up there.
Mm.
It's the belief that they're able to somehow experience experience the feelings that we're having
Mhm.
while we're experiencing these outer images. It's not like they're experiencing a red balloon going up, but it's more,
Right.
how am I feeling, and does that go up? If I'm reading something meaningful, poetry or something deeper, I also bring him into my consciousness and hold him, thought his countenance in me while
Mm.
I'm doing that. And Mina too. So now that it's been a long time, I invite different people in. Sometimes I invite three people, or depending upon the day and my energy level. But once I shifted my consciousness and said to myself, I just have to create a new relationship with him.
That part. That part. Yes, yes. I was thinking about this recently. I was having a conversation with somebody and I asked them, what is your relationship to them now? And when I said it, it was one of those things that, like, okay, yeah, that's right. Like, you still have a relationship with the deceased, and what is your relationship to them now? So I'm curious, like you being able to connect with them, talk to Mark and Mina, this is just a reorganization of your relationship in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, otherwise, I I just can't. It wouldn't feel right to me. I mean, I
Mhm.
think about my grandmother in the same way, and friends who I've lost, and it's like for me, I have to say, yeah, it doesn't feel right when it's just okay, that's it, you know. And and the other thing, Chris, too, is that because I've been doing this so for 40 years, caring for the dead and teaching
Mhm.
people how to do it, I see a lot of dead people, and there's a certain quality in the room when you go into a room when somebody's died, and for those 72 hours, there's something there still. So there's that element where you feel it's very similar to when a baby's born. There's this sort of vibrancy, there's this tingling, there's something going on. um and I feel like it shifts after 72 hours. Definitely they're gone
Mm.
and they're out there, but I can't resign to the fact that that's it.
Mm.
And also, I think, and you probably have experienced this, and I know many, 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 many people have, because I've read books, I've talked to people. There are signs that show up. There are little things that happen that darn well. It's just like, that is just too coincidental. That is little too Mark like.
Mhm.
So, yeah. I don't think we're
Yeah.
alone. I think they help us out. I do, and I know it sounds woo-woo, but I'm sticking with
Woo woo is welcome here. I'm so curious too, like how did, and you've said that like you've experienced a lot of loss, you've seen a lot of people die and exit this world. Like, how has this changed you as a person? And how does this impact your worldview and just how you show up as a person each day?
Well, I don't know if it's changed me. Well, there are two. See, I've been doing this since I was a young person.
And
So,
wait, so I want to ask you, how you got into this and what exactly is this?
so this caring for one's own dead,
Okay.
or having a more hands-on experience and teaching people how to do it, and
Mhm.
having, instead of just picking up the phone and calling a funeral director and having strangers take your loved one, I've been helping families. Let's do it yourself, and I can help you, and I can help be that liaison between the funeral director and you, so that the family is more involved. Um, and that started when I was a teenager. I mean,
Really?
it wasn't something that I just decided, oh, this is what I'm going to do one day. No, this is stuff that's been going on for a long time.
I have
And
to ask, what about you as a teenager? I mean, most teenagers are getting a job at Dairy Queen, and like here you are. Like I'm gonna
I wanted a job at Dairy Queen, let me tell you. Um, the I was boarding with a family, and the woman who was the matriarch and the mother, Nancy Jewel Poor, uh, she was sort of she was doing it for her elders. My parents lived an hour away, so I had to live with them. They were my best friends, and it was a big, lively family of six children. And so I just came in and boarded with them. And they were taking care of their elderly, and they were making their own wooden caskets, and we had to help line the caskets with silk and help sand the casket. So I didn't know. I thought everybody, this is just what you did. Wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Um, and I had seen my first dead body in England as a young girl when I was 9, and it was across the street from where I was, and it was in a beautiful chapel and a simple pine box. And so I've been around this notion of people caring for their own dead, and it's just what you do. So I didn't know any better. And then it just kind of happened. Um, and I started doing it more and more and more. Yeah.
When you were, I mean, I think everybody's afraid of death in some level, but like it sounds like you got really comfortable with it. But when you were a teenager, did you could you recall fears of death, or was it just very natural for you throughout?
It was very natural. There was no, it, it, it just, it just was, I just did it. It
Mhm,
wasn't anything. And I grew up with not a lot of media and not a lot of external, ooh. I mean, I was always fascinated by witches and ghosts, and
mhm.
me as a production designer, art director, and that kind of stuff was always in my mind. And it's a very strong fantasy world that I lived in, but it didn't cross over into the death and dying. That was just, I saw it as these are older people, you take care of them, they die, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask, Heidi, and this kind of goes a little bit back to my previous question, but like dealing with the death of a loved one in such a tragic way, such a, you get a call on a moment's notice. Like, how did you live with that? And rather, how do you live with that? Because I think for a lot of us, that could be really hard to overcome, to just move on, knowing that like your life is, it's a random Tuesday and your life changes in a moment. So how do you live with something like that?
That's another really good question. when I had to sit there and make that decision of what do I do, I did not take that lightly. That was also a moment of how do I take this information and pass it on to my mother? Like that was a highly stressful situation, highly like super stressful. And there's no textbook on how do you tell your family member that somebody's died. There's This is just not a thing, right?
Yeah.
So I replayed that again and again and again, going, no matter what I say, no matter how I do it, I'm going to get shit on Messenger. And it made me think, huh, where does that saying come from? Or the saying, don't shoot the messenger. That actually crossed my mind at one point of you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So it was a feeling of absolute terror and panic and oh my God, like how do you protect your parent that you love? Um, so I don't know if this answers the question, but that does live with me still to this day of how, and every time my phone rings after a certain time at night, and it does, the little PTSD
Yeah.
is okay because my phone does ring at night every now and again, and it's inevitably somebody's died. So I'm on constant high
Mm.
level
Mm-hmm.
of alert in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's real. And that's what I was wondering because I think like in something that I realized when I worked in hospice, I just the normalcy of death. And, I would say that we would wake up with receiving a message of all the patients that passed away in the previous day. And after doing that for a few years, it took a toll. And sometimes I would just stop and kind of look around that, people are going grocery shopping, people are going to little kids' soccer games, and someone else, like not too far away, is passing away. And for me, that gave me the sense of really connecting with it. Life is a gift. Life truly is a gift. And like, how do I just show up and be present for it? Um, and hearing you talk about this, I guess this goes back to some of the beauty that you were talking about. I wonder, like, and I mean, just how you come across as a person who's very thoughtful, who takes things in, and I can't help but see like the impact that this has had on you of, and kind of wondering how you connect to the world and how you connect to people.
I think like you, when I am standing in the grocery store, Trader Joe's or, TJ Maxx or whatever, I do look around at people and you never know because you know what it's like walking out of a room and you've just left somebody who's died and a grieving family, and you walk to the parking lot and you see the guy leaf blower blowing the leaves so it's this incredible balance of life goes on.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
die, and I use that line so often with people when they have this death and whether it's expected or not. I often have to say, remember, because they want to know if the cremation is going to happen right away or the burial. And I have to say, remember, there are hundreds of thousands of other people that are also experiencing this because we do feel like we're the only person that this is happening to right now.
Right. Right.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that this is a
So,
unique experience.
yeah. And the reality, it's not. Life goes on. People are
Hmm.
having babies. People are putting gas in their car. People are having arguments. People are making love. People are going to Dairy Queen or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I carry that consciousness. And I think probably other people do who work in this field, where you just look at people and go, huh. Um, One thing that it has done as far as how it's affected me and how I do things now is having done this work for a really long time. I'm 61 tomorrow.
Oh, happy
Um,
birthday.
yeah, thank you. Um, I consider myself a somewhat compassionate and feeling person when I'm dealing with families who are grieving. But now that I've done it myself, now that I've had my own messed up, intense grief, I understand it now much better. And it's not that I didn't get it when my grandmother died and my close friends, because that's all super deeply, tragically heart wounding. But when it's somebody that's so close to you and it was tragic and it was fast, for me, it it ripped, bruised, shredded my heart so badly that now I feel like I'm a better person when I'm meeting my families, that I can really understand the depth of their grief.
Hmm.
So that's a gift that I got from Mark and Mina. They taught me, something deeply, profoundly important.
Yeah,
And I think I'm a better person for in that regard when I'm doing my work.
I so connect to that. I feel that after, like, man, I so connect with what you're saying. When my mom was in the hospital, she had had a major stroke. This was 2 years ago. She had had her major stroke, and I had to make the decision to put her on hospice. And having previously worked in hospice, when the nurse came up to have me sign the intake papers, I was like, this is such a weird experience. I'm the one who was signing people up for hospice. I'm the one who was explaining all of this.
Mhm.
And now to have this shoe on the other foot, I just had to stop, and like it's like an out of body experience where I was looking at myself and saying, wow, like, wow, I know that I'm not immune to this, but wow, I did not expect this to happen this way. And and then to go through that path and to go through her subsequent death, I'm wounded.
Mhm.
I'm wounded, but I feel like the wound has created space for a love, and my wound has allowed me to connect to the wound in others who are grieving. And so it's a weird thing that, like, I was a compassionate person before. I felt like I could easily connect to people, but losing my attachment person,
Mhm.
um, ushered me into a different level of being able to connect with people on more of a visceral level than I
Yeah.
had been before.
Yeah. It's perfectly said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Can I just a couple more things I want to ask you? Um, what's something that you would love to say to Mark if he were here?
Oh, I don't even think it's appropriate to say.
Hey, that's all the better. That's all the better.
No, I say funny things to him all the time, but um honestly, I think in a really messed up way, I have to thank him for allowing what you just said, giving me that thing that, that giving me the pain that I am able to transform into love and support and compassion on a level that I wasn't able to do. And so I think I would say thank you for that.
Hmm, thank you for the
And
pain.
you're such a jerk for leaving. I, yeah, I mean, we were close. We were close and shared some good times and good conversation.
Mhm.
Um, and we were able to just silently be with each other too.
Mm.
a couple one-liners and a look. So, but I
It
think
sounds
I'd say thank you to him.
mm, okay. And then the same for Mina. What would you say to Mina?
I would say thank you as well. Um, Thank you for teaching me that seeing her literally slip out into the world and then to go back out to have that full circle, um, just blows me away. I mean, I just, yeah, there are no words. And I think of her now not as a little 6-year-old, but the feeling is of her as an adult,
Mm,
that sort of something has transcended when I think about her soul and her spirit, that it's not a little bouncy little girl, it's sort of this wise spirit or something, whatever it is, whatever we want to call it, it's
mhm,
matured.
mm. Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, I think so. I think those are the things that pop into my mind.
Okay. I have one final question for you, Heidi, and that's anything that you want to share about grief or life or the experience, anything that you want to impart for just the audience, anybody who's listening.
A few years ago, I was asked to speak at a conference on grief. And the thing that kept coming up was resilience, and also how over time, and I do believe this, grief is not something that's ever going to go away, and nor should it.
Mm,
I think the thing to do and the thing that's helped me is you have to you acknowledge it, you face it, and you know that it's part of you. It's like, the sweater. And some days I'm wearing it and some days I'm not. So the moment I decided to say, yeah, grief is here, it's part of who I am now. And hi, thank you. It changed how I am as a person, I think, because I have become more resilient. And again, I don't think people should try and talk you out of being full of grief. I think we take it, we own it, and we become friends with it
mhm.
and have it be part of your life because it isn't going to go away.
Yeah. What would you say if somebody was afraid to allow it in and to allow it to be part of their life?
Well, I know people like that.
Mhm.
And I feel really sad, really feel sad because it takes a lot of work to ignore
Keep
it,
it at bay. Yeah.
keep it out, you know? And that's hard. That's a hard burden to carry, actually. Um, and I feel sad when I see that.
Mhm.
I mean, how do you carry your grief?
Man, that is a great question. For me, I carry it with it is like very similar to what you just said of it's part of me. It's never going away. And I thought that there was some special destination that I would get to. And for me, I thought once I hit a year mark, I don't know why, but I thought once I hit the year mark, then like, whew, okay, I've kind of got somewhere with this. And then I remember Heidi, I remember hitting a year mark and being like, damn, this
Yeah.
still sucks. And this just means that I'm a year away from this and I'm a year away from her. And just recently, I was thinking, now that I hit the 2 year mark, I need to write down the things that I loved about her. Like, as my mom was aging, when I would go back up to see her in Sacramento, like she had this recliner that she would love to sit in and watch TV. And when I would go back there, be like, okay, mom, time to go up to the room because she would always fall asleep in the chair. And like I would put my hands out and she would grab my hands and I just do a little, okay, 1, 2, 3, and help her up. And like she'd smile and I'd smile. And it was just such a small moment. And I had done that hundreds of times over the past few years. And that had just been replaying in my mind. Like that was just a beautiful moment. And there are so many of those moments that I really want to like write down and recall so I don't lose them. Um, so that's how I'm holding her now. But I feel like also too with grief, I allow myself to be sad. I've been a person who felt things deeply throughout my whole life, and I feel like that's been a tremendous gift. Although when I was young, I didn't know it was a gift, but to be able to feel things, like to be able to hear a song and be moved, or to be able to see a bird and be moved, like that's something I really love about myself. And so when these feelings come on, I allow these feelings to come. And there are certain times where if I really think about the grief or I allow it to come in, it can feel soul crushing and it can feel like, wow, this world feels off kilter with my mom not being in it and with me being an adult male, knowing that on the physical realm, I'll never see my mom again. That could feel really debilitating and paralyzing. And so when the intensity of that thought comes, I allow it and I'll allow myself to feel like crap or to feel whatever the sadness and the pain and the longing. And I think that's one of the words too. Longing is one of the words that I use to really encapsulate grief. Um, but I allow it. And then I also realize that, like, to me, grief and my mom's death is like seasoning. Like, it brings more flavor to the world. Like, when I see somebody smiling, like, that smile, I think, oh, how would my mom react to seeing that little kid smile? Or how would my mom react to seeing,
Yeah.
that concert, kind of like you said earlier. So, in a lot of ways, her death is seasoning for life and it's made life more rich and flavorful. And within that flavor palette is the sadness and the longing that I just have to take with the sweet and the savory.
Mhm. Do you have a spiritual sort of basket that you can hold on to?
I do, yeah. So we were raised Catholic, and my mom raised me Catholic, and that was something that she was very determined for my brother and I to participate in. And so when we were kids, we would go to church. We were in church every Sunday for years, and
Wow.
that was our spiritual practice. And as a little kid, I didn't want to go because, I wanted to watch wrestling. Like, come on, mom. But the older I became, the more I realized like that was our culture, that was our shared language. This is a language that I still hold in my heart. I'm still a Christian. I'm not sure if I identify as Catholic, but I still have a great reverence for Catholicism and the times we shared around that. And my view, I've always felt this deep connection to God, and part of that was through my mom. A big part of that was through my mom. And in her eulogy, I wrote, because I was able to experience a loving mom, she allowed me to feel and to believe in a loving and just God. And so I still have this deep spiritual practice that she's part of. And I talk to her, not as much as maybe I could or I should, but I'll still talk to her. And like pennies, I always see pennies and I think of her because she would, without fail, pick up a penny. I mean, we could be walking across Fair Oaks Boulevard and like she would see a penny and like want to stop and pick it up. It's like, Mom, you're about to get hit by a car. Come on. Um, or peace lilies. And with spring coming up, there are some peace lilies right outside, and it's like a nice moment to make me think of her. So I'd say at this point, 2 years in, for every 10 memories or thoughts, eight of them are good, seven of them are good, and maybe three are really, I don't want to say bad, but just like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
she's not here. So yeah, yeah. So and I feel in my heart, Heidi, that my mom is with me and that she is looking out for me and that I will see her again. And something about love, um, I did not expect to feel this. Like when my mom passed away, I was in the room and I've seen people die before, but these are clients that I'd worked with and nothing as intense as this. Right when she passed away, um, I was the one who noticed it, and the hospice social worker was in there. It was myself, my wife, and I touched my mom's shoulder, and I could tell that her breathing had changed. And I knew the signs, and I touched her shoulder, and then she took a gasp, and then I looked at her, and then she stopped breathing. And I said, "I think she died. I I think she died."
Mm-hmm.
And then she stopped breathing, and then a few seconds passed, and then she took another deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
And then she stopped, and then she took another one, and then that was it. And
So three.
she took 3 breaths. She took 3 breaths after I touched her, and I just said, "She's dead. My mom's dead. My mom's dead." And then I was like, "Okay, let's tell the nurses," because she was in the hospital on hospice, and the social worker said, "Okay, I'm going to leave you and I'll go alert the nurse." The nurse came in, pronounced the time of death. And I remember feeling like the nurse pronouncing the time of death like 20 or 30 minutes later, and me feeling such ownership like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing. I know you're the doctor, but I'm pronouncing. And immediately afterwards, I told my wife, I was like, like, okay, let's go. And I had the feeling like I won an Olympic medal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt this triumph. I felt like I did it. I got my mom through because she raised my brother and I as a single parent. So many ups and downs, just very difficult time. And she put her all into my brother and I. And over the last few years, as she was battling dementia and just a lot of challenges with pandemic and, just her navigating that, I felt like there was so much worry and anxiety that I held about how she would be. And so seeing her take her last breath and seeing her dying, I felt like, okay, I got her through. And then much later, the thought came, she's finally safe. She's finally okay, which blew me away. I did not expect to have that thought, but I felt tremendously proud. And I remember telling my wife, like, okay, we can go now. And she's like, no, we should stay. We should just stay, which I really appreciate she did. And so we stayed in the room for about an hour and a half and just kind of told stories and then talked. And then later that night, I went to Rayleigh's. I went to Rayleigh's and bought some chocolate fudge ice cream and some marshmallows and just went to town. And I was like, there's times in life where it's like, forget cholesterol, forget all that crap, just, go to town. And it was like, wow, my mom is dead. My mom is dead. Wow. And it was weird, like even uttering that sentence. And now I can say that, but it felt like a piece of clothing that I tried on. That's like, nah, this doesn't fit. This does not fit to say my mom is dead. But here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so surreal.
It is surreal.
So
It
sur-
is surreal. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. That's really special. I know I could tell you were really close to her.
Yeah.
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 Do you
And
ever have dreams about her?
ooh, that's interesting. I don't, well, every once in a while, but like one of the things that was really challenging is that I would have dreams about her in her last few years, like as she was declining with dementia. These were really difficult times, and like the stress and anxiety of trying to develop a caregiving plan and trying to navigate keeping her safe was really difficult on me. So over the last, or I feel like maybe for the first year after her death, I would only have dreams about her in her compromised state, and only have dreams as like me as a caregiver, and me like, I'm kind of ashamed to say, but like angry with her, or me trying to like, okay, mom, come on, put on your shoes. Come on, let's put on your shoes. Just like all of that caregiving stuff that I did. And I took that as a sign of like that pain and that grief was so deeply embedded in my body that like that's just where I was. And I really longed for the time to see her 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the mother of my youth, who was just this beautiful, sweet, kind woman, which I mean, she was sweet till the end of her life, but seeing her without dementia, seeing her just in
Yeah.
her normal state. And I've since returned to those. So when I do have dreams of her, she's not it's no longer in the later years of her life where I'm just caregiving for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have dreams about Mark?
I have. I don't very much anymore.
Mm,
Maybe one a year. In the beginning, I would have like one or two.
mm-hmm,
Um, yeah, so not as much, not as much.
mm,
So,
mm,
which, you know, but the ones that I had in the beginning, I wrote down because they felt good and they were always uplifting and very warm.
mm-hmm,
I
mm,
would jot them down, and sometimes I try to go back to them if I read them to get that feeling or that mood back, that warmth.
mm, mm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting stuff.
it is. It
I'm
is.
curious to know actually, what inspired you? Like, do you remember the moment you thought, this is what I want to do? Like,
Mm.
were you drinking coffee? Were you watching TV? Making a salad? Like, did something just go, oh,
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was at work, and I was talking with one of my colleagues, and I was just sharing about some work success that happened. I had taken a trip. I had taken a trip to Canada for work, and I was just sharing this with my colleague. And there was a moment where I started to think about my mom, like as my colleague is just, giving me credit and just basking in this experience with me. And I had the thought, wow, like I wish my mom could see this. I really wish she could see this. And then I started to think of my mom as a little girl. She grew up in Miami, Florida, and I started to think about all that she had accomplished and all the struggle that she had been through, and I just wanted to tell her that I was proud of her, not as her son, but just as a man, recognizing what she endured and what she accomplished as a woman in this world. And I just wanted to tell her I was proud of her. And then also wanted to thank her for how she sewed into me to allow me to reach these certain heights that I've been able to reach. And I just I had the thought, man, if I had an hour with my mom, I would just tell her, thank you, I'm
uh,
proud of you, all this. And the thought of like an hour with my mom, that sentence just kept kicking around my head. And then I thought, you know what? Like, I want to talk to people and hear their stories because I love hearing stories. I love having conversations with people. And I want to hear people talk about their loved ones because I don't want people to feel like, all right, it's 3 months, it's 5 months.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's put to bed. Mark is still very much with us. Mina's with us. My mom, their spirits, I feel like, are in this conversation. And so when I had that thought, it came to me, let me set out to hear people's stories and try and really make grief more accessible to people. There's a part of me that wants to make this more accessible to men as well, to be able to step into this space. And then My hope is that people can realize that grief and sadness and joy and love can all coexist and that we don't need to push grief away.
Yeah, it's so important. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
name.
My mom's name was Brindledet.
Oh,
So, yeah, Brindledet, and she went by Brenda.
oh my goodness. Good name. I have
Oh.
this, and I'm looking outside right now, and there's this magnificent pink sky with a dark gray underneath, like really wild and beautiful and magical. And but I feel like, and again, this is sort of part of my belief, and is that when we have these moments of inspiration, and I talk to people about this as well, and I this is not an original idea, but I think it's important to consider that when we have these inspirations and these moments of where you literally sort of
Mhm,
that there are things going on upstairs that help the germination process. And so there's certain things that when they happen, or I just go, thank you, Mark. Thanks. That was
mhm,
so, thank you so much for that. Or thank you, Ilsa, or thank you. So there's certain things that I attribute the chess pieces down here are being moved around by whatever, God or whatever your deity or your
mhm,
person is. But I also feel like the dead are actively involved in making things happen for us.
mhm,
I just believe that so emphatically. And it's crazy. It's crazy because it just makes so much sense to me. So I ask that because here your mother's been gone now for 2 years and you've
mhm.
been doing this. And you can tell, I mean, I think it brings you joy. I
It
mean,
does.
I think that there's an element of this is so important. And maybe your mom is really instrumental in helping you spearhead this and do this because it's important work, Chris.
Hmm.
It really is.
Yeah, I feel that. I love this and I do feel that this is a calling for me. And like I feel so honored for you to bring Mark into the space, for you to bring Mina into the space. And I think like I've never been one to shy away from serious topics and I've been able to step into these conversations as are you. And I think the way that we were able to talk about Mina and Mark and Brindle Dad, like we're just having a conversation about it. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. And that's something that I want to bring into the world. Just it's really trying to be a light, to bring a light and love into the world.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now. Especially now. Heidi, thank you. Thank you. A deep, heartfelt thank you for this. Like, it's been such a pleasure to have you on, and just thank you for everything that you shared. Okay.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege, and I wish you were closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.